My boyfriend hid a secret relationship, so I trapped him with my beautiful cousin, spent his money, and exposed him at the airport. Imagine finding out your boyfriend has been lying, stealing, and playing you for months. What would you do? Here's what happened when I decided to take control. Ryan and I have been together 3 years. The first 2 years were nice, but the final year was all psychological warfare. He began scanning my phone, asking where I was going and who I was talking to. He'd become insanely envious if male coworkers texted me about job issues. He would make jokes about me being unfaithful in front of our friends. When I got furious, he would tell me I was exaggerating and that guilty people are defensive. The saddest part was that I never cheated, not even close. I remained fully faithful while he projected his own actions onto me. Martha was the one who originally caught him. She had been my best friend since high school, almost like a sister. One night, while Ryan was at work, she came over after I voiced another of his outrageous charges. I showed her a text in which he asked why I arrived home 20 minutes late from grocery shopping and suggested I was meeting someone. Martha gave me an odd look and showed me her phone. Ryan's dating profile was active that same day. His bio even mentioned that he was unmarried and looking for fun. Martha admitted she had suspected for weeks. A friend of hers had matched with him, but she recognized him as my boyfriend from photos on my social media. Martha had been accumulating evidence before telling me because she wanted to ensure that it wasn't a mistake. That night, we devised a strategy. Martha would set up a bogus profile and try to match with him to see how far he would go. Martha connected with him within hours. He did not even hesitate. Their conversations were filthy. He told her he was single and moaned about his neurotic ex, me, whom he was attempting to break up with but who refused to take the hint. When Martha questioned why he didn't just stop it, he replied, "She pays half the rent and does all of the cooking and cleaning. Why give that up, until I find something better?" He began emailing her screenshots of conversations with other girls he was seeing. In these conversations, they would make fun of me. He described me as the most horrible beast, something so repugnant to these women. Ryan sent a message saying, "I almost gag when she tries to kiss me." And some lady commented, "You're such a saint for putting up with her. I would have left ages ago." Ryan wrote back, "It's complicated, but not for long. I promise." These were messages to many women, all while he was accusing me of infidelity. All the time I was preparing his favorite meals, washing his laundry, and desperately attempting to demonstrate my devotion to him. I didn't approach him immediately. Martha and I agreed that we needed more than simply evidence. We needed a plan, not to bring him back, but to completely destroy him. For the next few weeks I pretended to be the ideal girlfriend while Martha communicated with him via the fictitious profile. I smiled as he kissed me goodbye in the morning. I still cooked and did his washing. I even apologized when he accused me of flirting with the delivery guy, who simply delivered me our dinner and went. All the time I was planning. Ryan arrived home late one night, smelling of a strange perfume. When I casually mentioned it, he became enraged and stated I was being paranoid and should talk to someone about my anxieties. He suggested that I might be depressed because I hadn't been myself lately. I simply smiled and apologized, mentally adding this to my list of reasons why he deserved what was coming. I reviewed our money. We maintained a shared account for payments, but Ryan had his own savings account, which he was really proud of. He was always talking about his financial discipline and how he was saving for our future. What a joke. Looking at our bank statements, I noticed huge withdrawals on the nights he said he was working late. Expensive dinners, accommodation fees, and gift shop purchases. That's when I understood just where to target him, his ego and his wallet. I remembered my cousin Linda. Everyone claimed we looked similar, but she was a prettier version of myself. Thank you, family. She had dark hair and eyes like myself, but she was taller and had a superior physique, as my mother would continually remind me. She was a model in college and continues to turn heads everywhere, and she owed me a favor after I helped her get through a difficult breakup last year. I phoned Linda and Martha for an emergency meeting and explained my entire problem. Linda was upset on my behalf. She said Ryan was committing emotional abuse rather than simply cheating. And she was correct. Martha showed Linda all of the information she had gathered, and Linda couldn't believe someone could be so vicious while claiming to be the victim. By the end of our 3-hour conversation, I was more than just outraged. I was calculating, cool, and prepared. That night, as I watched Ryan type on his phone with that dumb little sneer on his face, most likely telling another lady how terrible I looked while accusing me of texting someone, I made my decision. I devised a plan to make Ryan regret everything he ever said about me. Something that would strike him just where it stung the most. Martha and Linda were fully committed, and we were ready to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. First update. Our strategy was straight out of a heist movie, but it was real, and I was living it. We determined Linda would unintentionally run into Ryan at his gym. He went to a health facility downtown every Tuesday and Thursday, ostensibly for training sessions. But now I assume he was merely trolling for ladies. Linda received a guest pass from a member friend. We examined Ryan's regimen. He always shared exercise selfies with timestamps. What a predictable moron. And knew precisely when to place her on the treadmill next to his favorite bench press, the first day of Operation Takedown. Linda donned these ridiculous leggings that had me do a double take. She texted me from the gymnasium. The target has been acquired. He hasn't stopped staring since I came in. What followed was so predictable that it was almost boring. Ryan accidentally ran into her while retrieving a towel. Started a conversation about protein shakes or some bullshit and asked for her phone number so I could exchange training suggestions. He had already started messaging her that evening. My stomach was in knots as I sat with Linda on my couch, reading through each note. Martha brought champagne and takeaway, arguing that we needed energy for the psychological battle ahead. The texts were just what you would expect. Praises on how fit she appeared. Questions about whether she was single, with offers that they get a protein shake sometime. Ryan had no idea Linda was my cousin. We look similar, but only in subtle ways until you pay close attention. Ryan never paid much attention to me anymore. The plan was simple, yet catastrophic. Linda would date him, get him fully hooked, have him spend ridiculous amounts of money on her, and then we'd finally reveal everything. Meanwhile, I'd continue to play the innocent girlfriend while secretly enjoying seeing him dig his own financial and emotional grave. Linda and Ryan had their first date 4 days later. He informed me that he had a work function that night. I kissed him goodbye, encouraged him to have fun, and then drove straight to Martha's apartment, where we followed the entire evening via Linda's play-by-play texts. He took her to this extremely expensive restaurant that he'd never taken me to, despite my hints about wanting to go there for our anniversary. Linda claimed he bought the most expensive wine on the menu, bragging about his important position and bank account. He even had the audacity to imply that he was almost single and ending a dead-end relationship. When Linda emailed us a toilet selfie from the dinner, I nearly vomited. It was bizarre to see my lover on a date with my cousin while I sat on my best friend's couch, eating popcorn and plotting retribution. Martha kept reminding me that it was all just proof of what a piece of shit he was and that he'd soon pay the price, literally. Over the next few weeks, Ryan became enamored with Linda. He began canceling our arrangements to meet her, staying out late, and returning home with a smug expression on his face, as if he had some fantastic secret, all while Linda reported everything to me and Martha. The money spending began modestly: dinners, small gifts, and concert tickets. However, Linda was strategic. She casually mentioned some jewelry she liked as they walked past a store. The next thing you know, Ryan has spent $600 on earrings to please her. She'd mention a weekend getaway destination she'd always wanted to visit, and Ryan was instantly reserving hotels and making reservations. The best thing was that Linda would mistakenly leave these gifts at his house, claiming she didn't want to lose them. But he couldn't ask for them back later. Then she'd bring them directly to me. I now had a collection of fine jewelry, designer purses, and even a watch that he had bought for her. He claimed to be saving money for our future when he made all of these purchases. Linda has a system for organizing travels and experiences. She'd convince Ryan to schedule everything with his credit card. Then she'd come up with an explanation why she needed money for her share, which he'd quickly decline because he was attempting to impress her. Then after the weekend, she'd Venmo me her fun money using Ryan's cash. I'd occasionally use it for myself, but primarily I'd split it with Martha and Linda for what we termed our revenge fund. We were creating quite a nest egg. Ryan informed me one weekend that he would be attending a business meeting in a seaside town 3 hours away. He truly spent a lovely weekend with Linda at a premium resort. Linda convinced him that she needed $1,000 to spend on spa treatments and shopping. He handed it over without asking. While he was away, I spent that money on a spa day with Martha at a local establishment. We received everything: massages, facials, mani-pedis, on Ryan's pay. We even posted photos knowing Ryan would never look at my social media again. Ryan's lies to me grew bolder over time. He began working late 4 nights a week. We had business excursions on weekends. He even pretended his mother was unwell so he could take Linda to a wine country lodge. That next weekend, his mother called to invite us over for supper. I made up an explanation about Ryan getting food poisoning. Maintaining my end of the act was exhausting. I had to pretend everything was fine. He had to keep cooking his meals, washing his laundry, and smiling when he kissed me with the same lips he had used on my cousin. Things became more complex when Ryan began telling Linda about his bad girlfriend, me. Linda would record their discussions, which are legal in our state with one party's consent, and give them to me. Hearing him call me needy, clingy, and completely ignorant made me want to burn his entire existence down. The worst part was when he told Linda that he couldn't wait to be done with a dead weight and that the only reason he hadn't broken up with me yet was because it's so nice to have someone split the bills and do all of the housework. He literally called me his Roomba, which also pays rent. When I heard the recording, I shattered a glass against the wall while Ryan was not home. Martha had to come over and help me clean it up before he returned. Despite the hardship, the rewards of our program were beginning to pile up. Linda persuaded Ryan to buy her a new iPhone because hers kept dying. She instantly handed it to me because my screen was cracked. She convinced him to buy designer shoes in her size, which was actually mine. She even convinced him to pay for a weekend yoga retreat, which she never attended. I went with Martha instead, joking the entire time about how Ryan was paying for my relaxation while thinking I was at home doing his laundry. Linda started phase 2 of our plan around 2 months ago. She started talking about how stressed she was at work and how she wanted a proper holiday. She cleverly mentioned areas she had always wanted to go. Coincidentally, these are the areas I had mentioned wanting to visit. One night, on a date with Ryan, she burst into phony tears about how she'd never been able to afford a true vacation. Ryan, attempting to be the hero, instantly offered to assist. Before the night was out, he had planned a weekend excursion to this magnificent mountain resort approximately 3 hours away. All expenses have been reimbursed. This is where things got interesting. Linda called Ryan the day before the trip, sobbing. Her grandma was in the hospital, so she couldn't possibly go that weekend. Ryan was horrified, especially because the reservation was non-refundable. Linda, being the compassionate person she is, suggested he take the trip anyhow because he had worked so hard. Ryan grudgingly agrees. When Ryan informed me he was going on a guy's fishing trip that weekend, his cover story to me, I texted Linda and Martha. The plot was in motion. Linda had previously quietly given me the reservation information. As soon as Ryan went for work the next morning, I packed my things, picked up Martha, and drove to the same resort Ryan had reserved for his weekend with Linda. We checked in with the reservation Ryan had paid for. When I presented my ID, the front desk did not even blink. The reservation was made in Ryan's name but did not include guest names. We spent the entire weekend in luxury. Spa treatments, gourmet dinners, and hikes with a private guide, all paid for on Ryan's credit card. We even ordered room service and charged it to our room. Meanwhile, Ryan was emailing Linda about how unhappy he was, but how he was making the most of his fishing excursion with imaginary companions. We shot a lot of images that weekend, but we were careful not to post them someplace Ryan may notice. Those photographs went into what we called our evidence locker, a folder that we'd later utilize to show Ryan how thoroughly he'd been fooled. When I arrived home Sunday night, Ryan was already there, telling me about all the big fish he and his mates had caught. I nodded and asked questions, seeming to be attentive while privately repeating the memories of relaxing in a hot tub with a glass of costly champagne that he had purchased. This pattern lasted for another month. One of my favorite frauds was the birthday gift scheme. Linda remarked that her closest friend's birthday was approaching and she wanted to purchase her something special, but she was low on cash. Ryan instantly offered to assist. He ended up purchasing an expensive designer bag that Linda had chosen for me, which she swiftly presented to me for my birthday the following week. I took that backpack everywhere, including on dates with Ryan. He complimented it once, saying it appeared costly. I just smiled and said Teresa had gotten it for me, which was not a lie. His savings account was depleted, and he'd begun moaning to me about unforeseen expenses at work and how we might have to tighten our belts for a bit. The arrogance. Meanwhile, Ryan's relationship with Linda became more serious. He began talking of presenting her to his acquaintances, possibly even his family. Linda dodged expertly, constantly keeping him at the ideal distance, near enough to keep spending money on her, but not so close that their relationship would progress in any significant sense. Ryan was unaware that we were preparing for something significant. Linda had begun to plant seeds about a luxurious vacation she had always wanted to take. Some tropical resort with private bungalows above the ocean, where accommodations cost around $1,000 per night. Ryan naturally accepted the bait and began looking into options to see how he might finance it. That's when we realized he was transferring money from our joint account to his secret one to support his double life. Money that was supposed to go toward our debts and future. He'd been stealing from me to impress my cousin. Finding those transfers felt like getting hit in the gut all over again. However, it has made me more driven than ever to do this. As the third month of our program came to an end, Ryan was arranging this expensive vacation, depleting his savings account for deposits and purchasing new bags and ludicrous tropical clothing. Little did he realize, it was all leading up to the final stage of our strategy. But we weren't quite prepared to release the trap. Not yet. We have at least one more month to make him pay. Literally. What is the best part? He had no idea what was going to happen. He still assumed I was entirely unaware. Still preparing him meals and doing his washing like the ideal girlfriend. Linda, he still believed, was as much in love with him as he was with her. He still believed he was in charge of the situation, but we had complete control. And he would soon discover how terribly he had been duped. The second update came in month 4 of Operation Destroy Ryan's bank account, and things became pretty interesting. Linda had Ryan wrapped around her finger by this stage, and he was getting sloppy with his falsehoods to me. He'd work late and forget to text that he wouldn't be home for supper. He would leave receipts in his pockets, which I would uncover while doing laundry. He once called me Linda's name while half asleep. I had to bite my tongue so hard that it tasted like blood. Meanwhile, our retribution fund had grown to about $5,000 in cash as a result of Linda's theft and sharing of his money with us. Martha had also profited. We'd take turns using the spa packages and restaurant gift cards Linda would get from him. Ryan returned home one night, visibly agitated. He sat me down for a serious conversation about our finances. Apparently, he was having some temporary cash flow challenges and required me to cover some of our joint bills for a bit. Could I potentially pay the entire rent next month rather than just half of it, and also handle the utilities? He promised to pay me back once he received his job bonus. I nearly lost it right then. This involved spending thousands of dollars on my cousin while expecting me to fund his basic living needs. But I remained calm, nodded kindly, and promised to help out. What options did his oblivious lover have? When he left the room, I texted Linda and Martha. The phase escalation process begins immediately. The next day, Linda called Ryan in tears. Her automobile had broken down, and she needed $600 for repairs immediately. Ryan, despite having just told me he was broke, managed to find the money within hours. Linda accepted the cash, thanked him heartily, and divided it with me and Martha. We went shopping while her perfectly functional automobile sat in my apartment complex's guest parking, but the true goldmine was the tropical holiday planning. Linda had persuaded Ryan to rent this insanely costly resort in Bora Bora. Ryan was trying to come up with the funds, but Linda kept emailing him images of the location and raving about how it would be the most romantic week of their lives. I watched from the shadows as Ryan began selling items to pay the trip. His beloved vintage guitar collection, which he would never let me touch, sold on eBay. The valuable watch his grandfather left him was pawned. His crypto investments, which he was so proud of, were liquidated for a loss. All the while telling me we needed to cut back on pleasures like my daily coffee and Netflix membership. One night, when Ryan was showering, I checked his phone and discovered he had taken out an $18,000 personal loan. It's absolute crazy. Going into debt for a lady he'd known for less than 4 months while telling his partner of 4 years that we needed to cut back. During all of this, I was discreetly planning my exit route. Martha had helped me find a new apartment that was both affordable and secure. I had been slowly relocating my key paperwork and sentimental items there. I had started forwarding my mail to a P.O. box. I'd even opened a new bank account at a different institution where Ryan had no contacts. However, the burden of keeping up the farce was wearing me down. It was tough to play the loving, naive girlfriend while Ryan destroyed his finances for another woman, even if that woman was my cousin working for me. Some nights, I'd lie awake next to him, battling the temptation to yell at him for being such a miserable, disloyal piece of shit. Martha knew I was struggling and recommended we take a mental health day with some of our revenge fund money. We reserved a day at this fantastic hot springs resort about an hour from the city. What's with the irony? Ryan had promised to take me there for our anniversary but said we couldn't afford it. A day in the hot springs was just what I needed. Soaking in mineral pools, having massages, drinking champagne at 11 a.m., all while Ryan was at work, anxious about money, and entirely oblivious that he was paying for my relaxation. It seemed like poetic justice. When I arrived home that evening, Ryan was already there, which was uncommon. He appeared uneasy, pacing around the living room. My heart sank. Had he somehow learned about our plan? But it was something else entirely. He sat me down and told me he'd been really considering our relationship. This was it. He was about to break up with me, After months of cheating and lying, he was finally ready to stop things and be open with Linda. I prepped my phony astonishment look, mentally rehearsing how I'd phone Linda and Martha the moment he departed, to inform them that we needed to expedite our deadline. But that is not what happened at all. Instead, this stupid guy got down on one knee and brought out a ring box, containing an engagement ring. He began by explaining that he had been distant recently, because he was dealing with personal challenges, but that he had concluded I was the person he wanted to spend his life with. That some individuals do not appreciate what they have until they are about to lose it. That he wanted us to start over. I was literally speechless. Was this his strategy? To lock me down with an engagement while still seeing Linda on the side? Or was he planning to end things with her? In any case, it was the most sad and desperate action I could think of. The ring was little, nothing like what he had promised to bring me someday. Clearly his finances were in worse shape than I had expected. I stood there paralyzed, my mind racing with alternatives. If I answered yes, I would have more time to exact maximal revenge. If I said no, the game would end too quickly. I did what any respectable woman in my position would do. I burst into tears, and they weren't wholly artificial. They were rage-filled tears. I told him I needed time to think. His distant demeanor had profoundly affected me, and I wasn't sure whether we could work things out. That I adored him, a lie, but needed time to contemplate his proposal. Ryan was devastated, but attempted to disguise it. He said he understood and would give me as much time as I needed. He even suggested that I remain with my folks for a few days to cleanse my mind. I almost laughed aloud. He was attempting to get me out of the flat so that he could invite Linda over. I feigned to agree, packed a suitcase and headed straight to Martha's house. As soon as I arrived, I called Linda and informed her of this bizarre new development. She couldn't believe it either. What type of sociopath proposes to one lady while organizing a lavish romantic getaway with another? We decided to take advantage of this new circumstance. Linda would become increasingly needy and demanding in the coming days, testing Ryan's financial boundaries. Meanwhile, I'd tease him about the idea, asking for time and space while actually using that time to organize my escape strategy. I stayed at Martha's for the next week, although I spoke with Ryan every day. I texted him phrases like "still thinking" and "need more time," and he responded with increasingly desperate messages about how much he loved me and how he'd do anything to keep our relationship going. Ryan called me 10 days after the proposal, sounding agitated. He needed to speak with me about something crucial in person. My heart raced. Had he figured out our scheme? I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop the next day and quickly called Linda and Martha to plan an emergency strategy session. We decided that I would wear a little microphone. Martha had one from her journalism days, so they could listen from her car, which was parked close. If everything went south, they'd be immediately there to help. We also planned a cover tale in case Ryan found what we were doing. Ryan wanted to discuss something other than our scheme. It was money. He said that he had recently made some unwise financial mistakes and was in serious difficulty. He had maxed out his credit cards, taken out loans, and borrowed from friends. He needs my aid to get back on track. He specifically asked me to take out a loan in my name to consolidate his debts. He pledged to pay it back, and that it would only be temporary. He even stated that it may be the first step in our life together, demonstrating that we were a team that supported each other during difficult times. I sat there, startled by the audacity. This man had spent thousands on another woman, lied to my face for months, and now wanted me to go into debt to address his financial difficulties, which he had manufactured by attempting to impress my cousin. It took everything I had not to throw my hot coffee in his face. Instead, I told him I needed to think about it, that it was a major decision, and that I was still working through his idea, which introduced a whole new layer of complexity. As I left, I could see desperation in his eyes and promised to let him know as soon as possible. When I arrived back to Martha's car, we all burst out laughing. This man's sheer courage was nearly admirable. Linda quickly began planning the next phase. She would inform Ryan that she had received an unexpected bonus at work and could now contribute heavily to their vacation. All he had to do was finish the bookings, and she would reimburse him for her share. Of course, Ryan was unaware that the payment would never be received. Ryan made the final arrangements for their Bora Bora vacation over the next 2 days. He had to borrow a few $1,000s from his brother to cover the remaining amount, but he had done it. All non-refundable, booked in both of their names. The trip was supposed to begin in exactly 2 weeks. Their flights would leave on a Friday morning, giving us 12 days to carry out the final phase of our plan, and Ryan had no idea what to expect. I have no idea at all. Last update. The last 12 days preceding Ryan's romantic Bora Bora holiday, LOL, were some of the most hectic and exciting of my life. We had planned everything down to the minute. However, there was always the possibility that he would find something out, or Linda would make a mistake. Meanwhile, Ryan became increasingly desperate for money. He texted me about the loan repeatedly, saying things like, "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, and this is about our future together." This man had the audacity to think I would go into debt for him while he was arranging a luxury vacation with another woman. I mean, technically, it was my cousin acting on my behalf, but still. I finally agreed to meet with him over dinner to discuss our relationship and the financial situation. I chose this mid-range restaurant where we had our first date for symbolic reasons, as well as knowing he couldn't afford anything fancier. At this point, I took extra time getting ready, ensuring that I looked amazing. Hair perfect, makeup faultless, and dressed in the red dress he'd always adored. When I arrived, Ryan's face brightened up with hope. He was scared I was going to terminate things, but my appearance said differently. We ordered meals and made awkward small chat, and he kept looking at my left hand, noticing I wasn't wearing the sad little engagement ring he'd given me. Finally, I cut to the chase. I told him I had been thinking a lot about our relationship, the future, and what I truly wanted. His face becomes serious and expectant. Then I dropped the first bomb. I informed him I had looked into the loan he wanted me to take out and that I could probably get approved for $32,000. The relief on his face was immediate, like a drowning man seeing a lifeguard. He stretched across the table and squeezed my hand, stating how much this meant to him. How he'd absolutely repay me. How this confirmed that we were meant to be together. I grinned and stated there was only one condition. I required access to all of his financial records before taking out the loan, bank statements, credit card bills, and everything else, to fully understand what I was getting myself into. His expression froze. I kept my expression innocent, as if this were a completely acceptable request from someone about to assume their partner's debt. He muttered something about how it wasn't necessary, that he'd manage all of the repayments, and that I shouldn't be concerned about the minutiae. I stressed that if we were to develop a life together, there had to be complete transparency. Ryan appeared to be about to get sick. He excused himself to the bathroom, carrying his phone with him. When Ryan returned to the table, he had collected himself. He agreed to send me his financial records soon, but claimed right now the most essential thing was to finish the loan application because he had some tight deadlines. I nodded compassionately, mentally adding this to the mountain of evidence proving he was a manipulative ass. I told him I'd go to the bank on Monday, it was Friday evening, to begin the application procedure. His relief was evident. He had no idea that I had no intention of giving him any money. Over the weekend, Ryan was especially attentive and affectionate, bringing me coffee in bed, proposing we watch my favorite movies, and even cleaning the apartment without being asked. All while continually texting Linda about their forthcoming trip, which was now only 9 days away. On Monday morning, I told Ryan that I had a bank appointment. I put on my most professional suit and left the flat while he wished me luck. I actually went to meet Martha and Linda at our new favorite coffee shop to settle our plans. Ryan was eagerly awaiting my arrival home that evening. I informed him that the bank needed more time to analyze my application, but that everything seemed good. He tried not to show his disappointment and tension, but I could feel his hands trembling slightly as he held me. Linda played her MasterCard 4 days before the vacation. She contacted Ryan crying, claiming her grandma had just been ill and that she might have to fly home to see her instead of going to Bora Bora. Ryan panicked and began suggesting solutions. Could they postpone their trip? Number. Non-refundable. Could her granny wait? She was surprised he would suggest that. What if he accompanied her to see her granny instead? Number. Only when there is a health problem does the family get together. Linda called back with excellent news after giving him 24 hours to stew. Grandmother was stable, and the doctor advised there was no cause for immediate alarm. The Bora Bora trip could go as planned. Ryan was so relieved that he gave her flowers as a comforting gesture for her grandmother. Flowers were delivered to my new flat, where Linda was now residing half the time while we prepared for the next step. Ryan was in a terrible mess 2 days before the trip. The bank, aka me, still hadn't authorized the loan he so sorely needed. He was attempting to pack for Bora Bora while concealing his suitcase in the closet whenever I was home. He was juggling texts between me and Linda, hoping to keep both relationships afloat. It was almost tragic how pathetic he had become. Almost. The night before the big trip, I told Ryan I needed to talk to him about something serious. His face turned pallid. He presumably assumed it was about the engagement or the money. Instead, I informed him that I would be staying with Martha for a few days to reflect about our future plans. His relief was apparent. This solved his difficulty of leaving for the airport without me asking questions. Ryan had no idea that while he was at work the day before, I had already relocated the majority of my remaining items to my new apartment. All that remained were some clothes and toiletries that could easily fit in a single suitcase, which I packed while he was showering. As I was preparing to depart, Ryan hugged me hard and said he hoped I'd have an answer concerning our future when he returned from his business trip on Sunday. After 4 years together, I was still surprised by his ability to lie to my face so convincingly. When I closed the flat door, our final countdown began. Operation Complete Destruction was officially started. I walked directly to Martha's house where Linda was waiting. We ordered pizza, opened champagne, and reviewed our strategy one more time. Ryan will fly to the airport tomorrow morning, expecting to have the romantic holiday of a lifetime with his stunning secret girlfriend. Instead, he was about to have the worst day of his life. We slept very little that night because we were so excited. Linda texted Ryan at 6 a.m. "Good morning. So excited for today, can't wait to see you at the airport." Ryan promptly answered, "Just finishing packing. See you at Terminal 3 at 8:32. Can't believe we're finally doing this." At 7 a.m., we watched Ryan leave with his suitcase, appearing happier than I had seen him in months, via the apartment building's surveillance app. Martha, Linda, and I jumped into Martha's car and drove ourselves to the airport as soon as his car left. Not to fly someplace, but to see what was going to happen. We arrived at Terminal 3 at 8:15, and sat at a cafe with a great view of the check-in counters. Ryan came at 8:25, anxiously looking around for Linda. He checked his phone, texted her, and went to stand in the check-in line for his trip. Linda emailed Ryan the message we had carefully drafted the night before at exactly 8:45, as he approached the counter. It was a selfie of Linda, Martha, and me, all smiling broadly and holding our middle fingers up. Linda wrote beneath it, "Surprise, hope you enjoy your $20,000 vacation for one. Your girlfriend knows everything." We observed from our hiding place as Ryan read the message. He stopped in the middle of the check-in line and stared at his phone. In a matter of seconds, his expression shifted from uncertainty to astonishment and fear. He looked all around, as if expecting to see us. I tried contacting Linda right away, but it went straight to voicemail because she had banned his phone. "I tried calling you." The same result. Ryan stepped out of the line, still staring at his phone in shock. He sank onto a nearby bench and hurriedly typed, most likely sending desperate messages that would never be delivered. We watched this for over 20 minutes before he finally stood up and went zombie-like toward the exit, dragging his bag behind him. Ryan called us all day from numerous phones, leaving more urgent voicemails. We ignored them all, instead concentrated on the second phase of our final strategy. I'd also left a carefully prepared note on the kitchen table describing what we knew, as well as printed copies of some of his most offensive texts about me, including ones in which he called me the most disgusting thing in his Roomba, which also pays rent. The letter stated that if he contacted me or Linda again with any threats or harassment, the full evidence folder would be sent to his parents, boss, and made public. Is all of this strictly necessary? Probably not. Was it delightfully pleasant after months of psychological torment and cheating? Absolutely. Ryan arrived at the flat that evening only to discover that he was unable to enter. The security camera captured his outburst in the corridor as he discovered how thoroughly he had been duped. Ryan experienced every possible feeling over the next few days. He wrote emails pleading for forgiveness, angry ones calling us crazy bitches, and sorrowful ones about how he'd lose his job if he didn't pay his obligations. We completed the final phase of our plan exactly 1 week after the airport incident. Linda, Martha, and I planned a weekend stay at a beautiful nearby spa facility, paying with the remainder of our fund money. While relaxing in hot tubs and having massages, we each shared a single photo on social media. Predictably, this provoked another wave of urgent messages from Ryan, who was now using his brother's phone because we had blocked all of his numbers. He couldn't see how we could be so harsh and ruthless. He stated that what he had done wasn't as horrible as how we had destroyed his life. The absence of self-awareness was simply amazing. Ryan has attempted to reach me through a variety of methods in the months since. He even addressed a letter to my parents' home. They sent it to me unopened. He has not repaid any of the money he took from our joint account, nor has he explained to his family and friends why he suddenly had to move back in with his parents at the age of 32. Ryan is reportedly working 2 jobs to pay off his obligations. The vacation packages, flights, and hotel reservations were all non-refundable, as Linda had specified when booking. His credit score is ruined. His savings are gone. Meanwhile, I am thriving in my new flat, I have been promoted at work. I'm wearing fancy clothing and jewelry that Ryan paid for. I'm planning a genuine vacation with Martha and Linda next summer. One that we will pay for with our own money, since we are not sad cheaters who must manipulate others to get our goals. Ryan arrived at my apartment complex at 3 a.m. last week, evidently inebriated and screaming into my Ring doorbell camera about how he'd made the worst mistake of his life and would do everything for another chance. I watched the live feed from my phone, snuggled up in bed, and did the only natural thing. I sent the video to Linda and Martha so that we could all laugh about it together. Then I emailed it to building security to have him removed from the property. 20 missed calls later, he gave up. I slept like a baby that night, knowing he was struggling while I was thriving. That, my friends, is what you call karma. And it is lovely.